there hasn't been this consistency of incredible drops since 2018. So I'm very hopeful for the future, and I think we're in for a good ride.
At the same time, what's going to be happening in the next 12 months, and also how much of an influence is TikTok and the short form video having on music?
Every 10 years, there's something that comes along and kills the music industry.
Thank you very much for joining me. The production is looking crazy already with the camera cuts. I don't even know how that's happening, to be honest, boys.
Shout out to Nick in the back. He's always doing some crazy stuff in the back with our recording process and always making sure everything looks great. So shout out, Nick.
Yeah, I hope you're doing well, John. Honestly, a big pleasure to have for you to have us on the show. I mean, we've been fans of your channel for a while, always since the Rock Reacts days. So it's awesome to be here, man.
Absolutely. And what's crazy about John, too, is that I feel like he's really one of the first content creators that showed support as well for the platform when we first started. So thank you, John, for always showing NFR support and love. It really means a lot to us and the team.
Oh, pleasure, man. I've always been excited to see the guys that are sort of coming up and coming through, and you guys have crossed over that threshold now. Same with Turning the Tables, and they've gone they've gone to the moon. Those guys, crazy stuff. But yeah, it's always exciting to see people coming up, and I think I actually want to talk to you guys about that. Actually, we might as well get straight into it. It's one of the things that impressed me, even when I think you and I, Anthony, probably had a phone call maybe a year ago now, first time.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was when I was starting TikTok and starting short form video, and I noticed that you guys had already been doing really well in that space. And I was kind of blown away by the professionalism, to be honest. And now you've gone past 1 million on TikTok. And, the start to the year for you guys on YouTube's been crazy with the stuff with Fantano. But I think, like, look at you guys. They're in an amazing studio. I see the blonde. I see the faces in the background. But also, you've got a producer. You've got camera cuts. And you guys have been working like this for a long time. And I think it's really interesting to kind of hear the story of how everything came about, how you're operating like a professional company. You already just spoke about the platform as opposed to just the channel. That kind of blew me away already. So yeah, but I'm rambling. Just tell me about everything that is NFR Radio.
I mean, to be honest with you, NFR podcast really started off as a hobby. I mean, we were just really close friends in high school, and we would spend so many of our nights just like hanging out in random parking lots, parking our cars, listening to albums, and having like our own like album listening parties in these random parking lots. And we found ourselves talking about music within a group of like 3 or 4 guys a couple of times a week. And we're like, you know what, why don't we just put a camera in front of ourselves and actually, see if there's an audience out there. And it was kind of just, it was all for jokes, right? We never took it seriously. We never saw it being an actual brand or a platform. So we ended up shooting in my basement.
Yeah, originally it was in Lou's basement.
Yeah, we started in my basement. We actually had to redecorate the walls, which my mom wasn't too happy about. We put some wallpaper all over it. We ended up printing out some posters from Walmart from different album covers.
That Big Daddy Kane poster was actually hard, though. It was. I remember that. Yeah, we went through a process for that. It was super nice from the beginning because it started off as a passion project, and I think it is still there. I mean, we're passionate about what we do, and the first priority for us too from the beginning, because we did do a couple of rebranding, let's say phases where we started off with a different name under a different brand, and that was more like when we started to come up, and then there was a switch in 2019 when we officially opened up, not for radio, and then eventually we ended up at NFR. So throughout that process, we also started off doing local interviews in Montreal and within Toronto. That was super fun because it gave us a different perspective on artistry when we were coming up, and I think that added a lot to our arsenal when it comes to journalism, when it comes to the way you talk about the music. We were able to put ourselves in that moment and within that scene. And when we started doing that and COVID hit, we realized that, hey, like, listen, travel was not as accessible to us because of the restrictions. And we were going to have different issues with getting to certain places. So we're like, why don't we just concentrate on our content and really trying to push that forward?
And our dynamic as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what kind of set everything off. And then we started getting into Twitter spaces, and we were growing a following on IG. And then we got a fantastic opportunity from a gentleman by the name of Mark St. Onge. He has a studio in the outskirts of Montreal. Like, it's on the side. It's a place called Longueuil. And, it was a super random night because the way that this ended up happening and we started actually doing video was one night, Nick and I, our other partner, by the way, we're 3 partners in NFR. We went over to our buddies for a quick brew, and we were just like, you know what, let's just go see what happens, and it was a regular Friday night. And his father gave us the opportunity to, get connected with this gentleman that got us into this super beautiful studio. And we started to learn about production styles. We started to, learn about the importance of content quality. We started to figure ourselves out as creatives. And then eventually we ended up moving into our own space, which is now the NFR layer. We have so much stuff in here, and it's been a journey.
It's been a journey that's been going on for like close to 5 years. If you really like consider since the inception of everything, It's been quite some time, man. It's been quite some time.
It has been some time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think next month is 5 years from when Rock React started as well. So similar time frame. I don't quite have the nice space that you do. I'm still in. Well, everybody that knows I use the green screen.
Your production quality has always been fantastic.
Yeah, that green screen is fire, bro. It's like you're in this professional ass studio.
Yeah. It's not quite wide enough. The problem is I've got the wide angle lens for these, which is actually this is a nicer camera than my normal video camera, but I have the wide angle Sigma lens, and my green screen's like this wide. So if I start putting my hands out and I had it up here, it's a whole disaster. But we are going to move house soon, so I'm hoping to have a nicer space to do this. But I saw you guys first on YouTube. Doing things on there, building a brand on there, and then seeing some stuff on Twitter. And then it was only when I went on TikTok, I think at the time, you already had over 400K on Twitter and, on TikTok. And I couldn't believe, let me rephrase that. Nowadays, on those platforms, whether it's Reels, TikTok, or Shorts, you can't move for 2 or 3 scrolls without seeing somebody facing off camera, speaking into a Shure microphone with writing coming up on the bottom of the screen, whether it's fucking Andrew Tate, you guys speaking about music or whoever it is. But I wasn't really seeing so much of that unless it was a clip from Rogan or something before you guys kind of helped popularize, I would say, that style of content. Obviously, TikTok's gone crazy for you now, but how important has the short form content been to growing the long form, and or has it, in fact, have they been separate?
No, it definitely has been, crucial to us just building and growing. And I think the main reason why I wanted to get into it is that we saw an opportunity. I mean, in terms of music commentary, there weren't too many people that were actually consistently posting, music commentary videos and stuff of that sort. So we're like, you know what, let's actually commit to this. Let's have a plan. Let's kind of develop different ways that we can shoot our content. If that's more traditional hip hop facts, if that's quizzes that we do between the two of us, if it's more engaging with the fans and reacting to their hot takes, like we kind of just really mapped everything out, planned out different ideas. And then we're like, hey, you know what, if we're going to do this, we have to do this right. And we have to be super consistent. So now it's been, I would say, the better part of 2 years that we've been posting 21 TikToks a week.
Yeah, for like the consistency basis with us. And for us too, like we always had the mentality that it was never going to be a numbers game, and we just wanted to see like what would happen, if we were to post at that frequency, because the first thing that you do pick up within those algorithms is that they do favor posting frequency, and that you have to be consistent. And just as a general marketing rule as a whole, like being able to, be a part of people's like daily routines on where they're getting their conversations from. So I think like taking that mentality with the way that we formatted of having music conversations, we wanted to feel like, hey, people were joining the conversations with us rather than us just trying to entertain or us just trying to like get quick views. Like those 3 a day really helped us understand like how to develop content, how to develop consistency, and, just be able to build a community of people that are super invested in what we post and what we do. So, another thing is anyone that's coming in from NFR platform and they're familiar with us, thank you so much for all the love and support over the past couple of years. It's been beautiful. And, you guys always come first no matter what. So I think that's another thing that really helped us succeed, is that no matter what we put out, the first intent is always, what is the community going to enjoy? Because you could be posting, crazy clickbait videos that get millions and millions of views on TikTok, but the problem is that it's never meaningful and it never really feels real. So what happens is that, let's say you go into a video like that, you'll never really buy into the brand's mission, or you'll never really feel like you're a part of a community. So our goal was always, let's play the frequency game, and like, let's actually get our content out there, but let's never sacrifice what we're trying to do as a brand to be able to, just strive as quickly as possible. Like for us, it was like brick by brick, day by day, and let's try and maintain that for as long as we possibly can,
Yeah, fantastic. I love the line that you just used there about where people are getting their conversations from. I think that's actually so true for the world that we live in now, 2023 onwards. We do, don't we? As like consumers. I mean, I've been listening to podcasts for years and years, all the way back to the old gaming ones back like sort of 10, 15 years ago. But yeah, especially as somebody like myself who spends a lot of time on his own, getting your conversations that you want to consume is actually a real part of sort of modern media culture. So yeah, that's kind of interesting that you fold that into your mission statement and your branding.
Oh, it's everything, man. And I think that the tighter that mission is, and the more concise that it is, and the more consistent that it is, and the more passionate that it is going to really decide how much longevity you have in the long run, and where you decide to go with your content. And, you got to think about it as a responsibility too. Like, we do put up a lot of views throughout the brand, as a whole, and that's a lot of different people coming in. So if we were to be feeding people content that's, toxic, or that, has a certain negative taint to it, or something that's not fun and lighthearted, like, we're taking away from these people. Like, they're spending time on our content and they're coming in for us. So they deserve to be getting the best, and they deserve to be, to be able to be a part of the content itself. Like, think about that. A lot of creators don't necessarily think about that. It's a game of like, okay, like, how could I get paid, and how could I do this as quick as possible, when, one, that's never going to work in the long term. Two, that has a direct impact on your life and the way that you want to do content. Because John, as a content creator, you understand like how much of like the content that we put out there, like what we produce, has an effect on our own personal life. So when you're not ready to make that step and commit to a full passionate plan, that's when things get hazy, and like that's when there's a disconnect between you and the audience. Like, I want to come in and I want to make friends throughout my platform. I want people to have a say. I want this to feel bigger than just Lou and I and the setup that we have. So that was the mission from the beginning.
And I think that's what's kind of beautiful about it, is that it's like one of like the main things that we hear from our fans is like, when you guys are talking and sitting across from each other from the table, it feels like we're at that table with you guys. It feels like we're part of the conversation, just because, I mean, just the approach that we took coming into this game was more like, let's kind of be the average hip hop fan. Let's just be ourselves and kind of make our personalities shine throughout.
Don't try to do too much, like it's
be yourself.
Exactly. People take themselves like sometimes too seriously, to the point where like it blocks out the fun of the content, and where it gets like too harsh. Like, let's say if Lou and I wanted to start being, super strict with ourselves, and start to, let's say, get into too, deep of detail, or, to remove the fun out of it. Like, we could do that, but that was never the intention of when we started. Like, we always wanted to keep a lightheartedness within whatever we do. Yeah. And I think that's what, we're going to continue to do moving forward, because it's worked for us, and people love to come in. And whether you roast us or enjoy our takes, like, it doesn't even matter. Like, as long as you're there and you're enjoying it, and like you're sitting there and you're giving your takes, and you feel a certain type of way, that's all that matters. Have fun, do what you got to do, and just come through and talk about music. So that's always been the goal with us too.
Mm-hmm. I think it's there's some amazing game for people to pick up on here, because what's been exciting for me is seeing you guys grow. I think I've came across your YouTube. I think you had under 10K, obviously a lot more on TikTok at the time, but still relatively small compared to where you are now. And it's been really exciting just to see another channel, yet another channel grow from nothing and become, a big platform. And then you bring a level of professionalism that very few do, to be honest, which is, from a personal point of view, actually quite inspiring, and something that I've been aiming towards as well.
Thank you, John.
But I think for people out there, there's so many people want to create content, or they want to either be an artist themselves, or they want to be talking about this subject or whatever it is, sports, comic books, whatever it might be. And they feel like the barriers to entry, or the barriers to success, I should say, are too high. Like, the barriers to entry are relatively low because you only need your phone or whatever to start making the videos. But people can't see that there's any real way of succeeding. But one, it's possible because I keep seeing it happening. But two, I think the game that you guys are dropping on how you went about it from a sort of professional point of view, laying out your content, laying out your ideas, planning, execution. Could you guys go into that in a little bit more detail? Because I think that would be really valuable for a lot of people who are watching this, who reach out to me all the time wanting to start, whether it's reaction channel, whatever it is. It's how can you take that next steps beyond, everybody knows, just get going and make a TikTok, but then you make a TikToks for a month and they don't go anywhere and you feel sad and and then you give up. That happens all the time. I'm sure that happens every single day. How do you go to the next level?
I think one major thing that really helped us out is that, like, even at the early stages when we were dropping audio only podcasts and we were getting maybe 50 listeners within each episode, we were always, kind of ingrained within each community that was hip hop or music related that we possibly could have been. So we were always talking to people on Twitter. We were talking to people on Instagram. We were kind of like generating conversations, answering people's tweets just to kind of spark conversations and maybe get people familiar with us, with our takes and that sort of thing. So I think that was pretty important to us as well. And apart from that, I mean, my main piece of advice for anyone that wants to start their own channel, a reaction channel, whatever the case may be, just be super passionate about the topic that you're invested in. Because, John, I'm sure that you could relate to this. Like, on a weekly basis, there's so much music that we have to listen to. And I feel like when people overconsume a certain medium, they can be tired of that if the passion isn't there, if they're not super in love with whatever field that they're in. And I feel like because of the love that we have for the music, nothing's ever gotten stale for us. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that you need to carry with you. If you're going to invest all this time into a project, you really need to have that passion.
Yeah, and I would say take your time. A big thing for us too was being patient and really developing a workflow for ourselves, getting more on like the business aspect of things. We never rushed anything, when it came down to the way that we, did the marketing or the content distribution or what we tried to do, because we understood that over the long term, if you were to really understand step by step how, the process of creating content and thinking about content, receiving the criticism of content, looking at the way that you're building up your channels, if you didn't go through that whole journey and you were always trying to skip those steps, you were never going to be able to really get to where you want to get to, because you would have missed the whole part of the process that's the most integral, and that's actually like being boots on the floor and like really being a part of the content. Like a lot of people, they like the numbers and they enjoy the platform that they build, but they don't enjoy like, the process that goes into actually making videos. And they don't understand that, it's a work ethic and this actually takes a lot of time. And another big thing for us as well is that while, yes, we do have fun with the platform and, we do really enjoy what we do. Like you've mentioned in this, in this conversation, John, professionalism is everything. If you're not going to show up to your recordings, if you're not going to put in the editing time, if you're not going to try and connect with people, if you're not going to try and do what you need to do to be able to get to where you want to get to, it's not going to work out properly. And, it shows within, let's say, certain platforms that decide to cut those corners, and then they're left wondering, how do I do more? Well, you got to do more, and you got to really put yourself in a position where, you're selfless and you're trying to put your art out there. Another piece of advice I could give for people is like, don't take your content too seriously to a certain extent. Like, we do bring a certain level of professionalism, with our conversations, and we're really detailed in the way that we deliver them and the quality that we deliver on. But once it's out there, you've shared that with the world. That's what it is. Whatever it ends up doing number wise, for people that are struggling with their views, it's going to do that. You're going to hit the jackpot one day and you're going to be able to run with it. But the question you have to ask yourself too is that when you hit that jackpot, how are you going to sustain that? How are you going to be able to sustain a community? How are you going to be able to play the long game? Because anyone could go viral on platforms now. It's so easy. They're favoring it at this point. So if you're not able to create yourself a long-term plan and learn a workflow that suits you, then, it's never going to work. And don't burn yourself out over content. It's not worth it. This is supposed to be a passion project. It's never supposed to feel, like, hey, like my mental health is digressing or I'm being too stressed out because of content or this or that. Like, be locked in, but also have fun, spend time with your family, be inspired. Don't take it too seriously, because then you get too deep and then shit just, kind of falls off. So, be happy about what you do, but take time for yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I think one of the things that really helps for burnout as well for people who are in, whether they're doing something creatively full-time or as a side project, which everybody starts it as a side hustle really, is workflow. I know we will get into talking about music in a minute, don't get me wrong, but I think this is really valuable. Again, the fact that when I spoke to you a while ago, Anthony, you spoke about sort of loosely, not going into too much detail, about how you guys plan out your YouTube strategy, your TikTok strategy, your Twitter strategy, and you've got it laid out in a way that, I mean, nothing automates itself because you still have to actually show up and do the work and have the conversations and bring energy, etc. But I've noticed when I've been slacking off my workflow, that my stress levels and burnout feeling levels go up. And when I'm on top of that and I've got my weeks planned and I'm not having to wake up every morning thinking, what am I going to record today? Everything is just so much easier. Could you talk through a little bit about what's a typical week look like without being, you don't have to give away all the NFR secrets, but like, how's it laid out? Because I think some people don't, they just assume that you're just like getting into the room and we don't know what we're going to do. Let's just make it all up on the spot. But realistically, that would be impossible.
What I would say is, well, first off, like, Lou and I do a lot of work, but it's the team that drives it. Like if you don't have a solid team behind you and you don't have people that trust in your vision and that, bring an extra layer to the vision and bring their own culture within your own culture, things tend to be a lot more stressful. So while yes, like Lou and I do keep good composure and we're always available for content, it's really the people in the background that help us a lot. So shout out to the team, shout out to Mark, shout out to Luca, shout out to Nick. Like, like these guys are here every single day, like putting in some super crazy work and making sure that, hey, like, this stuff is getting out on time. So we do have an advantage on that front, all guys that we grew up with and we went to high school with. So it's been like the culture within the workflow itself is super fun because, a lot of our time that's spent, let's say chilling or let's say going out, like we've kind of shifted now into more of like, let's be creative, let's get work sessions in, let's do recording nights. Like, I think that's helped a lot for us. And just on an organizational front, like, having this conversation with Nick the other day, like you could low-key plan for anything you want. You really can. And organization is really key when it comes down to timing, the amount that you're doing within a certain session, being able to, yes, stay within the lines of communication with your team, but also being able to stay, take a step backwards and work on your own time. That's super important. So it's whatever works for you. And that's going to develop over time. Like you won't have the answers after one night of content creating. It's going to take years to be able to develop that workflow.
There's definitely a lot of strategy involved for us. I mean, when it comes to even like deciding, okay, what are we going to shoot for content next week? We'll have a phone call about a week before that recording day, and we'll actually develop certain ideas beforehand, then come into that call and discuss different ideas. Maybe it's a new series that we want to experiment with. Maybe we're looking back, okay, you know what? This series did well in the past. Let's bring this back and add a new twist to it. So we're kind of always thinking ahead and planning in terms of the actual content, and in terms of even something like TikTok, where you have so many different videos coming out each and every week. What we do is we actually keep spreadsheets of all our analytics, and we actually go through them. We look at, okay, you know what? This video worked. This one didn't. Let's see the reasons why. Okay, you know what? This one didn't work. Maybe for the first 20 seconds, we didn't get to the point quick enough. So we're definitely super analytical when it comes to deciding, okay, let's do this piece, let's not do that piece. And in terms of actual planning of content, I mean, like I said, that's our approach, to be super strategic and, kind of think of the ideas way in advance. But there's also times where, for example, the Grammy winners come out and we're just shooting on the fly, or Rolling List drops their albums, the top 200 rap albums, and we're just shooting in the moment. We think, okay, this is a pretty cool piece of news that our community is going to be invested in. Let's fucking have a conversation about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too is that's more of the strategy too with the rollouts and like going within the artist marketing. Like that's been super fun too, because us covering the marketing and the rollouts of all these artists has been probably one of my favorite things to do with the platform. It's so interesting to see the way that's what
made it stand out. I want to add that. Like I think that like even if you look at John yourself, I'm sure that one thing that made you stand out, especially at the beginning when you had Rock Reacts, was the fact that you guys were metalheads going into hip hop. Same thing with Turning the Tables, right? They had you had Connor that brought on his dad Kevin, who knew nothing about the music that he was being shown. And I think that's kind of where we stood out at the beginning, was covering rollouts in terms of this artist just dropped their track list and their album title. Let's talk about that. Let's kind of be there for the pre-hype of the album. And that's how we started kind of getting our first big hitters on YouTube, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was super fun too, because all we had to do was be fans. Like it was really like that. It was just investing ourselves into the fandom and really just sparking those conversations within the community. And it's helped us develop a better sense for our content as well, because then you start observing the marketing tactics of the artists and you start applying certain tips and tricks to your own brand and the way that you want to move forward with it. And it also creates a level of excitement within the community. But there was also there was a thing with it at the beginning too, is that like if you're covering too many rollouts and you're too reliant on, let's say the albums that are coming out or the music that's coming through to be able to generate conversation within your own platform, there are dead seasons in music. So we never wanted to be one dimensional with our content as well. And we always wanted to bring in an extra culture on top of that to make sure that like, hey, people are coming through every single day and they're still invested with us. Like they're still there. Like we wanted to make sure that, music fans are being fed all year round rather than just being there for those big moments. And then, okay, let me just go away for a bit and let me come back when there's something hot that comes out. Like we always found that being diverse and being able to play in our own court and have our own culture to NFR was what we wanted to do. And I think the podcast medium has been a beautiful way to do that because we could go within everything piece. It's always within the realms of one long conversation. Like we always wanted to just have conversations about anything and everything. So the way that you bring that into a content format is how you decide, but we always wanted to be multidimensional with it.
Mm-hmm. So moving on then to the actual music, you say about keeping the passion up, and something that I've been struggling with a little bit in the last, probably 12 months, to be honest, is I feel like a lot of the music, especially in the hip hop space, if you can call it that, that's doing big numbers right now, apart from the established artists of the last 10 years, isn't speaking to me as much as a lot of the music that was doing the same sort of numbers 4 or 5 years ago when I started reacting to music, and was the reason that we're able to create that angle of the metalheads. And it was just kind of sort of luck and happenstance that we really, really like the music, especially me, I think. Now, I'm not really invested in NBA Youngboy, in a lot of these other artists in a similar vein, and Ice Spice. A lot of people are coming out and making waves, and I always sit there worried as a 40-year-old, is this my moment? Has it gone when Cole and Drake, not necessarily Drake, so I feel like he's just going to be around forever, but when these guys are becoming the old head guys, as it's going to happen over the next few years, am I done in this genre? Because there's nothing that's really spoken to me for a while. So, yeah, what are you thinking about the current state of hip hop? I mean, just to elaborate on that slightly, I actually think it's in an amazing state in terms of the breadth of music available with the underground scene, with the established artists, and it's an incredible time if you love hip hop music to listen to hip hop music. But in terms of the sort of slightly narrower, super popular numbers driving stuff, a lot of it isn't speaking to me personally. So. Give your thoughts on some of that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, when it comes to the mainstream especially, we're kind of at a point where it's a crossroads point, because all of those stars that we had in the last decade, when you look at the J. Coles, when you look at the Drakes, the Kendricks, they're all kind of nearing that 40 mark. And there's kind of this presumption in hip hop where it's like, okay, once an artist reaches their 40s or 50s, they're done. But I mean, to me, that's kind of untrue, just because we've seen someone like Nas have amazing longevity within the game. And I think what the real issue is that, like, a lot of the up and comers that are doing numbers in terms of the mainstream, they're kind of lacking a bit of originality. They're maybe lacking conceptual basis for their projects. And lately, I've been like kind of enjoying a lot of stuff coming from the underground. If that's either from, a group like Griselda, if that's someone like a Billy Woods, an Earl Sweatshirt, like, I feel like the underground is really making the most groundbreaking and innovative music when it comes to hip hop. But how do you feel about that?
I think that hip hop's in a very interesting space right now, actually. And I have this thought a lot too, because, we do cover, predominantly hip hop, and like that's been our subject for a good amount of time now. But I think what's so interesting about the genre as a whole is that the sound could go really anywhere. If that makes sense to you. So hip hop at its core is really expression and rhythmic timing on certain types of production. So what I'm excited more for is like how this develops on a community basis. So example, like you have certain artists that are going into other genres and other subgenres to be able to bring that sound in and mesh it with their own sound. So I think that hip hop is getting to a very creative place where it's no longer traditional hip hop, but it's not really a genre as a whole, really. It's just different sounds coming from different curators. So
like a kind of a genreless
exactly,
genre?
Exactly, because it's becoming spread thin like that. So for us too, like, yes, obviously the mainstream has a lot to do with, our conversations and like, what we do, but I feel like the music, industry as a whole is going into a different area where a lot of it is going to come from these micro communities that build up these core fan bases that end up having that boiling point. And I'm not sure, John, if you remember back in 2010, but this was a thing, but people did feel like, hip hop was going to die. People felt like, hey, like this is really getting to a point because we don't have the next Wayne. We don't have the next Eminem. We don't have the next Jay-Z. And then what happens a couple of years later? Well, we're in 2015 and 2016 and 2017, 2018. and the genre is striving. So
you also had Nas in the 2000s saying, putting out an album called Hip Hop is Dead, and people maybe started getting behind them, thinking, oh shit, what is the future?
Exactly. And a lot of it is also like media driven as well. A lot of it is that like media outlets will pick up on certain conversations that are happening or about to happen, and they'll blow it out of proportion. I mean, we all know about, different media outlets and the way that they like to cover their stories. So a lot of it too is just being able to, stay invested in the music. That's it. As long as there's people listening, there's going to be something to talk about. And I think that even when you have to look at a commercial success and the way that things are going, hip hop still has the largest market share in the US right now for music, and it's still the most popular music genre within the world right now. So it's not going anywhere for a while. And I think that there are certain growing pains that we went through with COVID that kind of stunted that initial growth. But even looking at last year, man, looking at Cheat Codes, looking at Lupe Fiasco's new album, looking at Logic come back, Kendrick, Drake delivering 2 projects, Metro Boomin, Denzel Curry, JID, there hasn't been this consistency of incredible drops since 2018. So I'm very hopeful for the future, and I think we're in for a good ride.
And let me ask you this, John, because you mentioned like not gravitating too much towards someone like YoungBoy or Ice Spice. So like, where do you think there is that disconnect? Like, why aren't you a munch, man? Let me know.
What's going on?
I thought it was bad to be a munch. I don't know.
I don't know.
To be honest, I don't really have anything against her. It's just not really spent enough time listening to her music. I've spent quite a lot of time trying to listen to YoungBoy's music, because the whole thing with Rock Reacts at the beginning was, even if we didn't get something, we'd be trying to understand what it is about the younger generation, typically the younger generation, that this music is speaking to them in a certain way. And we want to know, I certainly want to know what it is. And it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to like it, but I'll at least carry that understanding. Oh, okay, they like Lil Pump because of this reason. That's not enough of a reason for me to like Lil Pump, being a classic example from back then. When it comes to YoungBoy specifically, nothing about his music, the production, the variety, it does anything for me. And then when I go back and listen to either something truly classic from the 90s or early 2000s, or something from the last decade, in the Drakes, Kendricks, that sort of mold, or even something on an earlier Future track, something from the kind of trap lane, there's nothing there. It doesn't move me. And sometimes I just trust my limbic system when it comes to music. Sometimes I want to get into the lyrics and the content and try and understand the meaning and try and understand the motivations behind the music. And sometimes, most of the time, in fact, I just trust my limbic system. And if there's nothing happening there, that's what concerns me. And I go, okay, well, I don't particularly like this artist, and he just happens to be doing the most numbers right now, although those numbers are always slightly confusing to me. But would he sell out? Would he sell out big shows? I'm not sure. I know there's all the complications with house arrest, etc. But at the same time, I'm like, what's going to be happening in the next 12 months? And also, how much of an influence is TikTok and the short form video having on music and music consumption and music fandom at the moment? Because the way my boy, 11 years old, and I spoke about this on video recently, is finding music is fascinating. It's time is of no object, like era, decades, there was no object. And everything is a 30 or 20 second clip, but it's tied to something else they're emotionally invested in, whether it's a meme, whether it's something, just something that they're connected to, much in the same way the film soundtrack would, but massively truncated. And then the kids don't know the names of the songs, they don't know the names of the artists, but they love the songs, and they will go and stream those tracks, but they don't become fans of the artists typically, I'm seeing. And that's going to be fascinating, because where does that end? I don't think we know yet.
Yeah, and we were kind of doing, we have a video that we were recording last week, and one of the stats that we actually brought into it was the fact that a lot of new listeners, I believe under the age of 25, I think it's like 15% of new listeners, I think actually in the UK, under the age of 25, have never listened to a full album. And I was fucking blown away when I saw that.
Never one, like from a survey that they taken, they realized that people aren't as invested into album experiences.
And that was
anymore.
2019. Imagine now. But this is the thing too, is that like that's just another obstacle that the music industry is facing right now. Because are you familiar with the Defiant Twins, John? Have you ever watched that documentary of Jimmy Iovine and the whole rise of Interscope and Dr. Dre?
Yes, yeah, amazing.
incredible documentary and inspired me so much over the years. There was one thing, I believe it was Jimmy Iovine, that had said, is that every 10 years there's something that comes along and kills the music industry. And that's kind of happening right now, whether if it was like, let's say, of the previous decade where, like, you know, let's say music piracy and the digitalization of music assets was becoming a huge problem for the profit of record labels. And then how did they adjust to that? Well, let's get into the streaming services and let's adapt to the behaviors of the listeners. So where I think it's at right now is that a lot of artists that I also speak to and a lot of different record labels, they're trying to find that connect. They're trying to bring back an album experience, or they're trying to bring back that sort of vintage feeling of going through an album just through different formats. So example, even for us at NFR, like one of our brand missions is always to have people enjoy the album experience first. That's why we cover albums. We talk about track lists. We talk about the behaviors of investing your time into a track list. Like, there is going to be that culture developing, you know, and you also have to understand that sometimes these young kids that are 11, 12 years old, they don't have the education to be able to go out and enjoy an album experience. They don't have the education on, you know, how do I sit down and actually enjoy an album? Like, even when I was a kid, like, I wasn't invested into studio albums. I was invested into radio hits, and I was finding everything on much more YouTube through YouTube recommendations. And I was never really invested until I got older. So we're only going to see the shift of this new generation once they do get older, once they do get more education. And listen, these kids have access to all kinds of knowledge out there. It's the easiest time to access knowledge. You know, you could go out there and understand so much about an album before you even get into it. So I just, again, same thing as I said before about hip hop as a whole, like, we just got to be patient and we got to see where they go with it, because the introduction is cool. You know, a lot of kids are invested into that 20, 30 seconds and it's efficient. That's all it takes to sell them on the actual music. That's incredible if you ask me, because then it allows them to be like, oh, let me go listen to the full version of this. And you see how, example, like, you know, I had my little cousin, she was a big fan of Kill Bill off of SOS. And then boom, like, she went into a 23 song SZA album right after. So there's not a lot of, it's not all lost hope. It's going to get better. And you're going to see as it continues to progress, it's going to enhance the music. I mean, as you said, time is no longer a factor. Genre is no longer a factor. The artist's name is no longer a factor. So then what happens there? The marketing is kind of out of it. So now it's the music quality that's going to grab everyone.
Also, there's also like this kind of newfound appreciation going back to physical copies. I think like vinyls, the sales of vinyls have become the most popular like physical media for music. So it's been cool to kind of see that shift over the years.
Yeah, people are appreciating the influences now and they'd like to wear them on their sleeves. So what happens there is that, like, that culture shock of the past has an influence on the present and the way that people carry out their stuff. So a lot of kids are either going back to older albums that released 8 years ago where they weren't probably even born, or let's say for us, like, we access so much back catalog from the late 2000s and the early 2010s. And we have a good amount of our fan base that was maybe even like 3 to 4 years old when those things were getting released. And now it's like, let's bring them back to that time of where, like, we were picking up those things as kids and let them feel a part of it. And I think for us too, when trying to do that, was launching the audio podcast series that we just did and trying to get into different genres and introducing people to that album experience format. So trying to bring the education into content and guiding them through that process of just being a music fan and being educated on what you put into your rotation, because it's also important. If you're going and listening to music, you know, that has a direct effect on your lifestyle. It has a direct effect on the way that you think and the way that you perceive the world. It has a direct influence on your relationships. Like, music is extremely powerful and it's as essential as anything in this world. So if you're not making educated decisions on what you're putting into your rotation, then it could possibly have a damaging effect to the way that you live your life and the way that you perceive things. So that's what we wanted to bring to the culture, was just more of like an easygoing but educative stance on how to enjoy album experiences.
That's really interesting. I definitely don't think it's all doom and gloom. I've been around long enough, like you say, to see the death of whatever it is multiple times over. Obviously, I'm older than you guys, but I was there when I was a teenager, late teenager, when, you know, it was all Napster and LimeWire, and, you know, you could download one song and it took like 4 hours and you're absolutely buzzing if you got that one song. Everybody was predicting the death of the music industry massively then. I do think this is probably the biggest shakeup to happen to music since then. Perhaps even more so than the launch of the streaming services, because there was that kind of crossover with, you know, iTunes and paying for individual tracks and stuff like that. It is really interesting to hear that stat about people having never listened to albums as well, because yeah, I grew up from 12 onwards, 11, 12 onwards with albums on cassette and then CD. So the album experience was there, especially on tape, because you couldn't go between tracks. So like that was just like par for the course. You kind of had to listen to the whole album. But it's going to be really interesting. One of the things that I definitely believe in as I get older is paying attention to the people who are in their early 20s. You don't have to be friends with them at my age. That becomes a bit weird. But just like pay attention to what they're doing, what they're interested in, how they're behaving, just because that keeps you relevant if you're in the world of media and content. And then you have to do this with your own kids. Otherwise, it becomes very weird. Is pay attention to the 11, 12, 13-year-olds. Not other people's 11, 12, 13-year-olds, understand? Because they're the next generation that are going to be, driving absolutely everything. And yeah, you need to know what the hell they're doing as well, because before the 22-year-olds know it, they're going to be the generation that aged out. And I'm seeing that in my audience already. They're 27, 28 now, maybe. They're starting to get to that next stage of their lives, longer term relationships, work, maybe even kids. And their music tastes are freezing in that time, which is what happened to pretty much everybody that I know. Their music taste froze about 26, and they never got it back. They never went back, which is what happened to me and Simon. But we went back and discovered a bunch of other stuff, and that became a channel, and here we are. But this short form stuff is really interesting because it's kind of being informed. It's like informing the way artists and especially labels are looking to market and even create music from an artistic point of view. Like, we can hear artists are trying to make music that will be snippable. I can't think of a better adjective, something that will work as a clip. And yet I don't think you can actually necessarily drive that, because it seems to be like the culture that just takes something and decides that's going to be the next viral little loop.
Yeah, and that always happens within everything too. Like, people find the loopholes, people try to find the recipe and the the equation on how to get more album sales. But the thing is that you could do that, but what's the longevity of that record? Like, I've seen people, let's say, use SZA's model, and I like to talk about SZA's SOS, because right now, as far as like a commercial release, it's doing fantastic. I think it's still selling 100,000 copies first week at the time of this recording. And what's interesting about the way that they approached it was that, yes, you still got those snippable moments. You still got those, let's say, moments that would drive the mainstream and that would be able to make it to people's algorithms in front of their phones. But the quality of the music when you entered that world was so unique and was so passionate for what was going on right now that, people got invested right away. So I think, yes, like the introduction part is important, but also what backs that introduction is even more important, because I'll give you an example, right? Like, you go to a really nice restaurant, it's beautiful. All of the, like, let's say the setup in front is gorgeous. They have a gorgeous logo. It feels pristine. It feels nice. You go into the restaurant, the seating's gorgeous, Class A service. And then you get your steak and, it tastes like fucking rubber. And then you're like, well, am I ever going to come back to this place? Probably not. So you also got to think about it in that sense. Like, yes, these record labels are trying to play on that time, but they're also trying to keep people in. Like, that's really where they do make their money initially. Like, a lot of these people aren't even making money on their short form content because the monetization options are very limited on short form content if you're not a content creator and you can't implement, let's say, brand sponsorships, or let's say certain things like YouTube Shorts and TikTok. They're not paying out the same way that, let's say, a YouTube video would or a music video would for an artist. And back then, when I was coming up, watching, let's say, the come up of Odd Future or Top Dog Entertainment or even Dreamville, a lot of stuff in the promotion that they were doing, even ASAP did a lot of this, was like vlog content, taking people on tours, like getting into that long form content to be able to push their music. So it's never really changed when you really look at it. It's just, it's differently received now.
Yeah, but I do feel like you have to kind of use TikTok to your advantage. I mean, going back to the whole SZA example, you look at something like her song Shirt. That song had gone viral on TikTok before it was ever released officially. So I think that, like, the key there is really to, kind of introduce people maybe to your sound within that one song. And if they buy into that, maybe they'll buy into the album. But it's definitely tough if you don't have much to offer, because if you have a viral song that goes crazy on TikTok, then you'll get fans of that one song that might even go see you at a show, but they've never listened to your studio albums. And we've seen that with people situation. Like Steve Lacy. I think it happened to Destroy Lonely as well, where, one of his biggest songs is being performed, and the whole audience kind of went mute when he passed over the mic to them. So there's definitely been a lot of culture shocks with that, but I think it just comes down to us consumers and really taking the time to invest into what the artist has to offer as a whole. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's a big part of it as well, is like really us changing the way that we listen to the music and the way that we adapt to it and the way that we go through it, right? And there was a lot of artists back then that would have that number one single on the Billboard, Hot 100, or they would get the number one album on the 200. And then, people were only really invested for that one drop because they saw a music video or they saw a live performance, and then boom, they're completely disengaged with the rest of their career, right? So that's, I think, what the shift is now, is how do we have people invested into the careers and into the journeys of the artists through that short form introduction. And there's artists that are doing it in incredible ways, like especially for the way, let's say TikTok's been able to help even NFR, let's say, right? Because that was the reason why we opened up the YouTube and we wanted to go into podcast format, is that we knew that we were never going to be able to sustain everything on short form content. It's impossible. Like, it's an extremely volatile, technology. One day you're up, one day you're down. There's never really that much consistency in it. Like if you're not that invested through it. So for us, like, using it more as a driver and using it more as just like, okay, like let's use this for general brand awareness. That was the greatest approach we took with it, because we weren't reliant on it. Like you could have a community that's built on TikTok, but those people that you bring into YouTube or your audio podcast, the people that are sitting through 20-minute videos, an hour-long podcast, those are the people that are really invested into your craft. Yeah. So even for a lot of content creators that are trying to get into content, this is going back to that previous question you asked, John. I would say that, yes, TikTok and short form content is fantastic. It's provided us with a bunch of opportunity, but be realistic about it. Understand that it's not the set all and be all. It's really not like that anymore. Yes, there is a large population to reach on there, but social media trends die every single day. I mean, remember what happened to Vine? Like that was there, gone tomorrow. Same thing with MySpace. There was people like Drake blowing up off of MySpace. Is Drake still promoting his music through MySpace? I doubt it. So you got to think about it like that too. Like, yes, it's happening now, but there's technology is moving so quick. And I think that if these artists really want to see longevity, concentrate on the art and use these technologies just to be able to introduce a future community member. Don't really make it the set all and be all, or else you'll see how that ends up happening for you in the long run.
Yeah, it's definitely it's fascinating time, actually. As much as some of the new music that's coming out isn't speaking to me overall, the general scene, like you were talking about, the underground scene, the different ways of content delivery, super, super interesting. Plenty to be keeping an ear out for. And I'll tell you, something else that is interesting is what's happening over here. Now, I'm really interested in what you guys out there in Montreal or just outside Montreal. Is it in Montreal?
In Montreal.
In Montreal.
East end of Montreal.
Okay. Yeah. How much British music, specifically British rap music, is making it over there? Are waves happening? Because I know you guys are probably slightly more invested than most people from Canada and the US, just because of what you do every single day. But yeah, who's making a splash over there, if anybody?
Well, I mean, I'll talk about our personal rotations first, and then I could kind of tell you what's going on. So, for us, Little Sims is everything. Like we have a lot of Little Sims music in our rotations. We've spoken about her music on several different times. I mean, you have those classic UK artists like a Skepta,
Dave, of course.
Yeah, Dave, of course, like Stormzy, that make a lot of waves within Canada itself.
Jay Huss as well is very talented.
Because another thing too is that the Toronto scene is the
I was just about to ask about that.
Yeah, the Toronto scene is the biggest within Canada for, like, let's say, all of music, and we've had a lot of incredible artists come out of Toronto, and a lot of that Toronto scene is actually inspired directly from the UK. And not a lot of people know about that. So example, like, the types of productions they're using or the types of flows and pronunciations, like it feels at home when you listen to UK music, because you understand like what they're trying to do with the way that they pronounce certain, let's say, I'm not sure, syllables, or the way that they lay down certain lines. So it's
this
very
is because,
interesting.
right, there's I mean, I've never been to Toronto, but I understand there's a big like sort of Caribbean culture in Toronto,
Absolutely.
Correct? Which is obviously
Huge.
the genesis of a lot of the music in the UK. Now there's a huge like African influence as well here in the UK, but obviously for the last 50, 70 years, we've had a large Caribbean culture in our country, which has influenced massively influenced everything from language to music to food and of course population. But yeah, it's always been interesting hearing some of that same vocabulary in something Drake puts out even, and then diving a little bit further into that scene. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, perhaps more so than stuff I've heard actually out of the US.
It does. And the U.S. consumption is very different than the Canadian and UK consumption route. And people don't necessarily gravitate maybe towards a certain song because a certain accent is being used. There's a certain production style that doesn't feel at home for them, so they won't get invested right away. But for Canada, it's always been an easy transition because you are already getting those types of production styles and certain flows. And again, the certain types of writing styles. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on as well. But within Montreal itself, we have a huge French population here, and it's predominantly French language that's being spoken here on a daily basis. And a lot of people from the city are invested into, let's say, different types of French markets in the world, whether it be, the France scene or whether it be Morocco. Like there's a lot of people that are getting invested into those types of scenes, but also the UK scene, because people are loving drill right now. The production is contagious, and you don't necessarily have to pay attention too much to the lyrics. And even if there is a language barrier, I've been seeing a lot more people from the city getting into, the US market as a whole, or within the UK market and within other types of markets. So it's been a very nice transition.
I feel like for me, that's kind of the jumping off point. Like I'm okay with like getting into a variety of different accents, different slang, but when it comes to like actually a totally different language, that's where I have a disconnect with the music and I have a hard time kind of investing. And I feel like that's the case with a lot of people in Montreal as well, where you have a lot of the French-speaking population that is into, French rap as well as Quebec rap, which is the province that we're in. And then you have the English community that isn't really all that into the French rap, and I think that language barrier plays a big role into that.
Yeah, into the music consumption. But now it's been getting better because a lot of different things have been happening in the city, and there's a lot of talented artists that are coming through. So shout out Montreal. We have some of the best producers in the world here, like K Tronada or Nick Craven or High Classified, Young Troy. Like there's so many fantastic producers from the city that should be on people's radars, because it's also the producers push the culture. The producers are the ones that bring in those new styles and that bring in those new sounds. So when you have all kinds of incredible producers, example in the UK for you guys, a big one that we follow is Inflow. What Inflow is doing with his studio albums and what he's collaborating, whether with with Adele or let's say with a Little Sims, the sound sounds so unique and it sounds so groundbreaking. So the artist just has to go through and do his or her thing. Yeah. And then it becomes a good transition.
And let me ask you this, John, like, do you feel like that crossover will happen to a point where you have multiple UK rappers or artists that are kind of ingrained in the mainstream of the US culture?
I don't know.
Where do you see that going?
I think there's definitely going to always be an issue with the accent and an issue with the slang, especially as a drill in particular. Is very, very slang heavy, like in a way that even as me, like I'm not from London. I mean, the slang used there is not part of my everyday vernacular. But even in the last 5 years, the slang in drill was like completely different type of slang that I've been hearing from sort of UK rap music and grime from the last 15 years. So I had to learn a whole extra bunch of stuff. So I was learning all the American stuff and the new London stuff at the same time. And I think Central C did that interesting freestyle, didn't he, with the LA Leakers? I don't know if you saw it, where he basically just, it was almost like an instructional. This means this means this. You say this, I say this, which is actually kind of cool. You can sort of run that back when you listen to a drill track. But it's drill's in a weird place here in the UK at the moment, and people like Lita DeVi might disagree with me a little bit, but it's gone really mainstream really quickly, which is crazy because it's born out of like real nasty, it's extremely violent music. And the language used in the more extreme tracks is horrendous as far as I'm concerned, and it's often they're about real things that have happened and are currently happening with regards to gang violence. And yet a bunch of those artists and a bunch of artists have gone straight to like number one in the charts as well. So there's this like real clash at the moment where it's gone pop in a quite shit way, to be honest, like a classic trick for UK pop is to get a sample that the UK mainstream likes from a song from about 15 or 20 years ago, do something to it, and then put like a drill beat behind it, and then just rap some nonsense over it. Central C's already done it a couple of times, had big hits with it. And you know what I mean, if you've been around UK music for a while, you can kind of see through that trick. Every single UK rapper has done it in the last 5-6 years, outside of like Storms, Dave, Sims, some of the true top tier. And
we're seeing it in the US too now. The whole like bringing back the samples from 10 years ago, like obviously Jack Harlow with the Fergie sample on First Class.
Yeah, it's that playbook. It's that exact playbook. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's I don't know how I feel about that trend. I feel like it's gonna get old pretty soon, but I mean,
it's working.
It is working.
It is working well, you know. And works. Like I have to give them this though. Low key, the songs that they're choosing are actually like some of my favorites. So when I listen to example like I believe it was Ice Spice on her new EP with the song Gangsta Boo. She had used a certain sample with that little TJ feature, and like you hear the way that it's laid down in the production, you're like, this is actually a crazy beat. This sounds good. So in certain instances, like it does sound well polished. It does sound like, hey, there is something there. It's just like, how much of that could you consume? Luckily enough, like I don't have enough tracks in my rotation to be able to like get tired of it, where I do hear it, I do enjoy it, but it's not something that I always want to listen to, because then just go back to the original. But that's always kind of like the conversation with sampling is like, oh, you might as well just go back to the sample because, hey, like that's the original and that's the best version you'll get it at. Yeah, maybe. But I mean, even the creativity behind that and taking something that was, you know, done maybe 40, 50 years ago and bringing it back to a modern climate that now connects and resonates with a new audience. That's incredible as well, because now you're educating people indirectly on what music influences you had back then.
It's interesting you should say that. Yeah, because one of the first, I would say, one of the early big kind of like breakout rap tracks in the UK and globally is Killing Me Softly, Fugees. And that is obviously sort of a sample / interpolation of an older song that my parents knew from when they were younger. I think it's a song about Don McLean, sung by, I can't remember her name. Anyway, and then obviously redone for Killing Me Softly by the Fugees. And then has since been redone, that awful, oh my God, I just forgot and remembered that French Montana track from last year, which is one of the worst songs of all time. But I think when it comes to sampling, it's about intention. Like, are you intending to create great music? Are you intending to do something like, you know, Kanye West isn't someone I want to speak about too much, but there's no doubt one of the greatest sort of sample flippers of all time, if not the greatest. Is your intention to create something magical and incredible by reimagining this sound that already exists? Or is your intention to cynically appeal to a bunch of people who don't really like music, but only want to go and see the, you know, Ed Sheeran in concert? And that's what you're doing with this sample flip. Let's do something meaningless with the flip. Let's do minimum effort for maximum exposure, which the capitalist in me doesn't mind, but the music fan in me just sees straight through. And I mean, it's been happening over here for since I was a kid.
And there's definitely, you know, positives and negatives to it. I think, like, for me, it's allowed me to kind of find a lot of artists that were popular in the 70s or 60s and really get this newfound love for a lot of soul music through the sampling. So I feel like for certain cases, it does bridge together different generations of music. And for that, I feel like it's super valuable. I mean, even going to a recent example of, for example, Coi Leray on her song Players, that samples The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. And that, to me, is one of the most important hip hop songs of all time. It was one of the first conscious songs ever in the genre. And it inspired Ice Cube and so many of our favorites. And, you know, she's bringing back that sample. She's adding a creative twist to it. And it's actually pretty damn good.
It really is good.
I just think that in terms of actually making new audiences discover these amazing older artists that maybe don't get as much talk and as much respect as they should in today's climate, for that, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and think about how many people got introduced to Marvin Gaye's music by Kendrick Lamar with the Heart Part 5 drop. Like, you know, like, I Want You is one of my favorite songs of all time. Like, I think it's Oh, your water fell.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's all good. So, I Want You is easily one of the greatest songs of all time, in my opinion. And to see how many people from our community went back and listened, to the whole project, and just the I Want You soundtrack was absolutely brilliant. It's like, wow, okay, the way Kendrick did it was so impactful, and the way that he laid everything down was so well done that now it prompts artists to want to go back, and it prompts people to want to go listen to those older catalogs that will give them more education and that will give them more context while listening to their stuff. Because as Lou said, like, think about what Coi Leray is doing right now. Like, a lot of people did take her as a gimmick artist when she first released, and now it's like, whoa, okay, like there's certain parts of her music now and certain records that are coming out where, yes, certain things are still simplistic. It still is marketable bubblegum music to a certain extent, but you're bringing back an incredible song that, kind of defined the genre, and you're putting it in this new twist for a mainstream audience. That's brilliant. That's music education at its finest. Like, that's going to prompt people to go back, and that's how people are going to get invested into catalogs again. That's how people are going to find the gold. That's how people are going to start enjoying classic music again. And then what happens when you have to have an appreciation for classic music? You have to go back and dive. You have to do it. If you have an appreciation for old music, you're into album experiences. You're into album conversations and music conversations. So that's why I have a lot of hope for the future, because you're starting to see those little subtle, twists and turns within music consumption now. So the whole sampling thing is very interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well said, man. That was kind of a beautiful way to wrap things up. But before I let you guys go, I'm kind of interested in what you're really looking forward to in 2023. Like, are there any albums, unannounced or announced, that you just need right now?
Stove God Cooks from Griselda is one album that I've been waiting for, just because I feel like he has one of the most unique voices in hip hop right now. To speak about some more mainstream stuff, of course, J. Cole with The Fall Off. I don't know if you guys saw Ebe from Dreamville kind of teasing it on Twitter. So
Dreamville Fest actually teasing a bit of it as well, so that's very interesting. Listen, there's a new Pusha T and Gangsta Grillz mixtape that's apparently coming this year, and that should be phenomenal if it's well executed.
Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia, man.
That's gonna be another. That's gonna be like one of the best releases of the year. If it's like, it's Danny Brown.
I'm predicting it to be like a top 5 album of the year.
You think so? That would be absolutely incredible. Apparently, Boldy James is actually going to be releasing Drug Dealer with all of those unused J Dilla beats. So and apparently I believe, I don't know who was talking about it from the Griselda camp, but apparently the album is absolutely phenomenal, and I could just imagine Boldy James delivering on those J Dilla beats. Other low-key artists that I'm excited for this year, D2X. D2X is a fantastic artist from Chicago. Anyone that's listening right now should go access his music, and he's gonna be dropping a new album this year. He's someone I'm really invested into. But any other low-key artists, Lou?
Any other low-key artists? Ian Triplin, who's definitely on his way up right now. I'm excited to see what he delivers in terms of his first real project. Apart from that, there's so much to look forward to, guys. There's 21 Savage's solo album. There's the return of Travis Scott, which is going to be a massive moment. So definitely a lot to be excited about. But what about you, John? What are like some of your most anticipated coming up?
Yeah, you've covered a few there. Obviously, Mr. Ocean hovering in the background there. We don't know. But I'll just say that every year until it happens. And literally. It's kind of been interesting for me, because I feel like as hip hop and some of it takes this kind of detour slightly into sort of dance electronic music with Drake and Beyonce last year. It's hearing like a slight EDM remix of one of Rihanna's tracks on the Super Bowl performance as well. That scene is having a real renaissance. You spoke about Kaytranada earlier as well. And that amazing record that he did with IDK as well. I'm really interested, not specific records, but what else we're going to see in that kind of crossover in 2023 and maybe even 2024. Are those genres going to continue to coalesce, or is it just a brief thing for 2022 as like clubs and discos and these spaces open back up again after COVID? I don't know, but as somebody that's kind of grown up with that music as well, that's definitely something that I'm interested in. There's an artist over here in Fred Again who is producing incredible music. He's actually worked with some UK hip hop artists as well, in Heady One, And his series that he's putting out on his own is very, very special. Again, it's dance music, it's not hip hop, but there are crossovers there. He's just released a new track with Skrillex as well, which is certainly doing numbers over here. I don't know if that's made waves over there.
Yeah, I've heard it. And actually, I have a couple of friends that went to a live show of Fred again, and they put me on to his music. I believe it was a couple of months ago with that Skrillex release. It wasn't released a couple of months ago. It was released this year, but and it's also crazy because doesn't he do everything like live, and doesn't he do like all of his sets like in person and all of the production actually in front of you? That was something
he does it on the drum machine and whatever it is, and it's quite incredible.
It's
that
incredible.
He's mixing it all in
incredible.
live, and I think he's like a classically trained musician from a very well-to-do background in the UK. I think he lived next to Brian Eno, so he just had some unfair advantages in life, which some people do, but by all accounts, he's an incredibly lovely guy, and the fact that he's got friends from the upper class and friends from the ends just shows that he's able to like speak to a lot of people at once. But he's definitely somebody to be keeping an eye on. Again, if your tastes are kind of broader than just hip hop, which I think, to be fair, a lot of people's are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's genre is a very restrictive word. I feel as if you could bump whatever you like, doesn't matter the style or the taste, and if it rings with you and it resonates with you, then put it in your rotation and have a day with it. I think that's really the important part, is being able to be limitless with your music taste and being open to everything and anything, and taking those risks is some of the most fulfilling times you'll have as a music fan. Taking that risk into a subgenre that you might have not known, or into an underground artist that you're really uncomfortable listening to at first, but you're like, you know what, I see the quality there, let me give this a bit more of a listen and really try to get it into my daily rotation and make an effort to go through it to now unlock a whole completely different music taste that you never really had in the first place. So
exactly.
I think that's important as well.
Yeah, beautifully said, man. I think that is actually the perfect place to wrap it up, because that's something that I subscribe to and talk about all the time. So yeah, thanks so much for your time, guys. I think this has been a great, I'm going to say, first conversation between me and you guys, because I feel that there's plenty more that we can get into in the future, and hopefully it'll be another exciting year for music. But yeah, just shout out to everything that you're doing over there. Amazing to see, inspiring as well. And if you're a content creator yourself or an aspiring content creator, there's playbooks here from the guys on NFR on some ideas that at least get your workflow in order, and then thinking of an angle to make yourself stand out from the crowd. You can do it. Like, I keep seeing it happening. It keeps happening. Like, you can fucking do it. So you just got to go and do it.
Absolutely.
All right. Guys, thanks so much.
Love, John.
Thank you so much for having us on, John, today. You're a legend, man. Thank you so much for everything you've done for the music commentary space. And as you said, you know what? I think a little podcast recording in the UK might be the vibe one day, man. For sure. That would be incredible. That would be super fun. I would love to do that. That would be fun.
You got to come over. And also, I've been to Montreal many years ago. It was one of my favorite cities to go to in the world. So, maybe we need to come back over and come pay you guys a visit.
That's love,
John.
John.
We'll
thank you so
definitely
much
have to link up soon. So,
yes.
Thank you so much, John. We appreciate you.